One piece of remaining business here. Order. A message has been received from the Lords that the Lords agree to the Leasehold and Freehold Reform Bill with amendments to which they desire the agreement of the Commons. The Lords' amendments are available online and in the Vote Office.
Leasehold and Freehold Reform Bill, consideration of Lords' amendments.
Now, before we move to consideration of the Lords' amendments received today, I can confirm that nothing in the Lords' amendments engages Commons financial privilege. We will begin with the Government motion to agree with Lords' Amendments 1, with which we will consider the Government motions to agree with Lords' Amendments 2 to 67 as listed on the grouping paper. I call the Minister to move the motion to agree with Lords' Amendment 1.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I beg to move that this House agrees with the Lords in their amendments. All amendments made to this legislation in the other place were minor and technical in nature and serve to make this legislation function as intended. This is a historic day for leaseholders. This package of reforms will transform the leasehold housing market and the lives of millions of leaseholders across England and Wales. Our reforms on lease extensions and buying a freehold will give families and individuals security, a core Conservative principle. Giving more leaseholders the freedom to manage their own building will empower them to make important decisions themselves, such as choosing a management company that delivers good quality work at reasonable prices, and will require management companies to up their standards and give leaseholders a better deal in order to retain and win business. On service charges, leaseholders must be given more information as to what is being done to their property and what they are actually paying for. The requirement for landlords and management companies to specify exactly what the service charge entails will encourage higher standards from these companies and empower leaseholders to challenge poor service. That's because transparency is a core Conservative value too. And similar, our buildings insurance reforms will stop leaseholders being charged exorbitant, opaque commissions on top of their premiums and tackle the proven cases of insider trading in the market. Fairness, another core Conservative principle. And then we turn to the millions of freeholders living on new estates who are impacted by poor service, bad management, opaque fees. These estates and the properties on them bring joy, security and futures for everyone who has purchased them, including the 1 million households who will be created in this Parliament. And, Mr Deputy Speaker, I can tell the House today that the Government's target of building 1 million new homes in this Parliament has been met. The further rights to homeowners on private and mixed tenure estates encapsulate what the bill is trying to do, which is bring fairness, security, transparency and competition to freehold estates. It is not right to force someone who has bought a freehold property to deal only with one management company who is not required to give any information or charge them reasonable fees, a monopoly. This bill will explicitly ban the creation of future leasehold houses. This is a once-in-a-generation reform that will alter the housing market forever. Mr Speaker, I beg to move.
The question is that this House agrees with the Lords in their Amendment 1. Father of the House, Sir Peter Bottomley.
Mr Deputy Speaker, I think the whole House would wish that the Secretary of State were able to join us. He is one of the people who's helped to move forward, and together with the Junior Minister. Can I say to Michael, well done, not just in education, but you've got a grip of the horrors in residential leasehold. After Grenfell fire tragedy, people realised that the people stuck with the bill, not just for cladding, but for every other fire defect, was not the developer, not the architect, not the surveyors, not the suppliers of components. It was the residential leaseholders who by law are only tenants and own not a single brick in the building. It was when the Secretary of State came in that action started. Actually, he wasn't the first. Two other Secretaries of State, I think, had to give instructions to their permanent secretaries to start giving out some compensation. But I still commend to government having an agency which can take over the potential claims of all the residential leaseholders and have an action against those responsible, and a round table with all their insurers would get £10 billion in almost overnight, saving the money going to the lawyers. Returning to the bill, I think there's been cross-party agreement over the last 8 years that something was needed. The Law Commissioner produced many recommendations, most of which are in the bill at the moment. I'm not going to go into all the details of the debate, which I heard in another place, where some people seem to think people's property rights were being harmed. I don't remember those members of another place complaining when the disgraceful statutory instrument 632 in 2020 came through, which boosted landowners' values by about £5 billion, and the only people who would be paying that would be the leaseholders themselves. There are three problems still remaining which the House will want to see urgent action on. And by the way, I'm very grateful to the people who supported the all-party group on leasehold and commonhold reform. I'd like to mention, if I may, Catherine O'Riordan, who's done really well on that, and the trustees of the campaigning charity Leasehold Knowledge Partnership, Martin Boyd and Sebastian O'Kelly, together with new trustees, including Liam Spencer, who's done a great deal in fighting off very bad landlords in the East End of London. The issues which I think should just be mentioned now, which the next administration which must move forward urgently, one is that the whole House accepts forfeiture as a draconian system which must go. The threat of losing the home is one thing, but all the equity going to the landlord is a totally another one, and that should be stopped. There was one case I was involved in Plantation Wharf, where someone was at risk of losing £600,000 over a disputed bill of £7,000. A second is the commitment to bring in a ground rent cap has not come forward, must be introduced. I acknowledge I have a share of a small block of leasehold flats in Worthing where I have a home, and I own another leasehold property which I let out, but I won't benefit from this because I've negotiated with my landlord that they would pay the ground rent for the next 30 years, which would see me out. But we do need to have the ground rent cap. We know that ground rents turn to a peppercorn if there's an illegal extension, and we ought to get to that as fast as we can. If on the way we have to stop at £250 a year, that's fine. And the last thing is that we need to recognise that a move to commonhold is the only way forward to ensure an effective housing market. We ought to stop new residential leasehold properties being sold, and we ought to find a way of making it in the interest of landlords and of leaseholders to turn existing leaseholders into ones where you don't have all the penalties of an external landlord who can go in for all kinds of bad behaviour, whether it's insurance commissions or it's other ways of taking money off the leaseholders improperly. I congratulate the government, I thank the Minister for his attendance, and I'm very grateful to the opposition for the way they helped persuade the Prime Minister that this bill could come forward in the last session of Parliament. I claim the credit because on the Tuesday before the coronation, before the King came, I was standing with the Prime Minister and the leader of the official opposition, and I said to the Prime Minister that the official opposition will help you, and Rishi looked at Keir, and Keir nodded, and now we've got the bill. Thank you.
Jeff Smith.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And on that note, can I also, on behalf of the opposition, welcome this bill. We're pleased that the disagreements down the other end of the building have been resolved, and that this can go forward. It's not perfect, as the Father of the House has pointed out, and I hope a future government, I hope a future Labour government, will take the next steps that we need. But it is a step forward, and so we are pleased to support this legislation going forward onto the statute books this evening. Thank you.
With the leave of the House Minister.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. With the leave of the House, I pay tribute to all the staff and clerks here, the countless campaigners on the rights for leaseholders, some of those mentioned by the Honourable Member, Right Honourable Member from Worthing, the brilliant parliamentary champions, including the Father of the House himself, the officials who have worked so hard to deliver this bill, and indeed to my private office and officials on the Renters Reform Bill, which has sadly not made it through the wash-up today, such as the nature of a snap general election. But the person who I must thank above all is, as my right honourable friend said, the Secretary of State, who has today announced his decision to not stand again. He has been an amazing mentor to me, a phenomenal person to work with, and a great and generous friend. I know he's not everyone's cup of tea, Mr Deputy Speaker, but he will go down as one of the great reformers, and children today go to better schools and get a far better education because of Michael Gove. He is brilliant, and I will really miss him. Mr Deputy Speaker, I've loved this job over the last 4.5 years, representing my home as the first MP for my constituency who is actually from Teesside, and I hope the people of Redcar and Cleveland will send me back here in 6 weeks' time to continue delivering for them. I thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and all those who sit in that chair. You were in that chair for my maiden speech, and you're there today as we deliver the final bill of this Parliament. And with that, Mr Deputy Speaker, the 2024 season comes to an end. Good night.
The question is that this House agrees with the Lords in their Amendment 1. May that have been say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to Lords Amendments 2 to 67. With the leave of the House, I'll put a single question on the government motions to agree to Lords Amendments 2 to 67. Otherwise, we'd be here a long time. Minister to move formally to agree to Lords Amendments 2 to 67.
Move formally.
The question is that this House agrees with the Lords in their Amendments 2 to 67. As Mayor that have say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. That concludes consideration of the Lords' amendments received today relating to the Leasehold and Freehold Reform Bill. Order! Order!